He thought he had her cornered, but Melania Trump, poised and calm, turned the tables in a way that left the entire room in stunned silence. The studio lights blazed down, casting sharp shadows on the polished glass desk that separated them. Melania sat there, every inch the picture of elegance and control, her back straight, her face a flawless mask of composure. Across from her, the host, an experienced provocateur, leaned forward, a sly smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. The audience, packed into the sleek modern studio, buzzed with anticipation, sensing this wasn't going to be just another interview. The air was thick with unspoken tension. This wasn't about her work, her charity, or her role as First Lady. This was personal, and the host knew it. The host, a media maven known for pushing boundaries, thrived on creating viral moments. His career had been built on making celebrities squirm, and tonight his target was Melania Trump. He started with the usual pleasantries, his words carefully measured, his tone cordial, as though he were speaking to an old friend. But Melania, ever the enigma, offered nothing, no warmth, no deflection, just that impenetrable calm. The conversation danced around familiar ground, her charity work, her views on social media, her life in the White House. The audience hung on every word, but they were waiting for the storm. The host knew this. He was ready to create the kind of moment that would have everyone talking. As he shifted in his seat, he could almost taste the coming confrontation. The subtle change in his posture didn't escape Melania's notice. He had been trying to bait her with questions that poked and prodded, but now it was time to strike. With a calculated pause, he leaned in and asked, his voice laced with faux curiosity, "Do you regret having a child with Donald?" The words hung in the air, sharp and venomous. The studio fell into a shocked silence. It was a moment that felt frozen in time, a line crossed. Melania didn't flinch, not even a twitch. She blinked slowly, her expression unreadable. There was no anger, no rush to defend her family. There was only a quiet stillness that seemed to radiate from her. The host's smug smile widened, emboldened by her silence, convinced he had found a crack in her armor. He waited for the hesitation, the fluster, the sign of vulnerability. What he didn't know, what no one could have predicted, was that Melania was about to show them all the true depth of her power. She inhaled softly, sitting forward just enough to signal she was about to respond. When she did speak, it was with the quiet intensity of a woman who knew exactly how to command a room. But before the words left her lips, the air around them seemed to thicken, as if the world were holding its breath. The silence stretched longer, heavier than before, and the host, embarrassed and desperate to regain control, didn't know what was coming next. He had thought he was the one with the upper hand. He had no idea he was already losing. Melania's voice broke through the tension like a blade, sharp and deliberate. "Regret," she repeated, her accent crisp, her tone steady. But there was something deeper there, something cutting. The host froze, his eyes widening in disbelief. This wasn't the reaction he expected. He had hoped for a stammer, a sign of weakness, a crack he could exploit. Instead, she was giving him nothing but steel. Then she tilted her head, the movement subtle but unmistakable, as if she were studying him, seeing through his charade. "I regret," she continued, each word landing like a strike, "that people like you think it's acceptable to disrespect a mother's love for her child just to get attention." The words hit hard, silencing the audience. It wasn't loud, but it was unrelenting. The air seemed to ripple with the impact, and for a split second the host's smirk faltered. A brief but telling moment of vulnerability flashed across his face. He had miscalculated. He had thought this would be her downfall, but instead he had just walked into a trap. Her gaze never wavered, her posture unyielding. "Barron is my greatest gift," she declared, her voice unwavering, each syllable imbued with a quiet force that seemed to envelop the entire studio. He is smart, kind, independent. You may not like his father, but I will not let you use my child to score political points. The words landed with a crushing finality, like a door slamming shut. The host, for the first time, was speechless. His carefully planned narrative was crumbling, slipping through his fingers. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The audience, once on edge, expecting a scandal, now found themselves witnessing something entirely unexpected. This wasn't just an interview anymore. This was a reckoning. The host tried to recover, leaning back, forcing a chuckle. "I wasn't," he stammered. But Melania cut him off with surgical precision. "You were," she interjected, her voice smooth as silk, but every word dripping with quiet fury. "You were trying to embarrass me, to make me regret my own son." Another murmur rippled through the crowd, a collective realization dawning. This wasn't just about politics or celebrities. This was about motherhood, and no one was going to diminish that. For a moment, the host sat there, stunned, his confidence shattered. He had been so certain that he held all the power, that he controlled the narrative. But now, in the wake of Melania's unwavering composure, he seemed small, insignificant. The audience was no longer on his side. The power had shifted, and they could all feel it. Melania, unmoved, leaned back in her chair, her expression still flawless, still implacable. The host shifted uneasily in his seat. The silence stretched on, heavy, thick, suffocating. He cleared his throat, trying to salvage something. "Look, I wasn't trying to be disrespectful," he muttered, his voice now faltering. "I was just asking—" Melania's gaze never left him. "Would you ask another mother that question?" she asked, her words cutting through him like a knife. It was simple, yet it was enough to make him squirm. For the first time, the audience began to applaud, hesitant at first, then growing louder, stronger. The host's smirk was gone, replaced by a look of profound discomfort. He tried to laugh it off, but the damage was done. His narrative was gone, and in its place, Melania had rewritten the story. As the interview wrapped up, the host was left fumbling, his carefully constructed moment crumbling into oblivion. The cameras captured every second of it, the flicker of panic in his eyes, the growing realization that he had underestimated the power of the woman sitting across from him. The aftermath was swift. The internet erupted. Clips of the exchange spread like wildfire, flooding Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Headlines screamed, "Melania Trump shuts down host after disrespectful question." Host humiliated by Melania Trump. The reactions were instant, overwhelming. People were in awe of how she had handled herself with such poise, such strength. Even her critics begrudgingly admired her grace under pressure. The host? Not so much. His name trended, but not for the reasons he had hoped. Host gets destroyed trying to humiliate Melania Trump. Cringe. Just cringe. The mockery was relentless. The network, scrambling to manage the fallout, issued a lukewarm statement, but it was too late. The moment had already been etched into the public consciousness. As for Melania, she moved on. She didn't need to bask in her victory. The moment had already spoken for itself. For the host, the consequences were just beginning. The internet had already made up its mind, and once the internet decides, there's no going back. The clip replayed endlessly, dissected by every pundit, every influencer. The host stayed silent, but his discomfort was palpable. When he finally addressed the situation, his words were empty, robotic. He didn't apologize, but everyone knew he should have. For Melania, it was a reminder to all. Never let someone else define your story. The world will try to manipulate, to twist, to turn you into something you're not. But in the end, it's how you respond that matters. Melania didn't shout. She didn't rage. She didn't flinch. She stood her ground with quiet confidence, with grace, with power. And in that moment, she won. Because when you refuse to be reduced to someone else's version of you, you cannot lose. If you found this story compelling, make sure to subscribe for more moments that define the world. leave a comment below. What did you think of how Melania handled the situation?